In this episode, we talk about the steps to successfully create your first VeVeVerse space. Now, just a disclaimer before we start today's episode, there is no set framework for this kind of stuff. Everyone's gonna have their own way of doing things. I'm just sharing what works for me, and my process is something that I've polished through a little bit of trial and error. So if you guys enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Now, the first thing that's gonna happen after you double click that VeVeVerse icon on your computer is a dashboard's gonna pop up with a menu to change some settings. So go through and change what you like. And then you're also gonna see a setting that you can toggle on and off that's gonna make sure this menu doesn't pop up every time you log in. And I suggest you toggle it on. Now, after you've done this, you're now gonna be greeted with a dashboard to select which environment you wanna build in. Think about the mobile app, it's pretty much the same thing as choosing a showroom space or a black AR space. Now, once you've selected the space you want and named it, the first thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna spawn inside the environment. Now, your spawn point is gonna be the first thing you wanna take care of, and this will mark where you and anyone else who visits your world will first appear when loading in. Now, this is important because if you end up building your space, a little bit far away from the spawn point, then you gotta walk a minute or two to get there. Obviously, you don't want to do that. I've also seen people build over top of their spawn points before as well. Put walls and buildings and things like that, and then next thing you know, the player spawns inside of the wall and can't get out. Or who's trapped on the other side and can't get into the map. I'm not entirely sure if you're going to be able to place multiple spawn points. I know that there should be one when you first load into the world. There was the option of placing one in the Cavernous free trial from the library, but whether Vivi has that toggled on or off, I don't know. But whether you have multiple or just one, spawn points are important, so take care of them from the beginning. From here, you're going to want to build your world around the spawn point, and 99% of your world, in most cases, is going to be comprised of simple shapes and other things in the library. Now, this step is you laying the foundation of your entire space, like the foundation before a home, or the penciled sketch before the full drawing. If you want to build a wall for a house, place the object, reshape it. If you want to build a shelf for a collectible, place the object and reshape it. And one tip while doing this, just to make sure everything is properly proportioned, pop between fly mode and avatar mode, because what this will allow you to do is take your avatar and make sure that the height of a table adds up with the actual height of the character. Our next step is to add textures to our world, or in other words, we're painting the house or color in the drawing. You are going to have a library of textures to choose from, but I do want to be clear that this is not just a one-step process. So the first thing you'll do is select the texture you want to use and apply it to the element you want to texture. But then next you need to edit that material to make sure the dimensions of the texture match the size of, let's say, the wall that you just applied the texture to. Because let's say you have two walls, one narrow, one wide. If I apply a brick texture to both of them, the narrow wall is going to have narrow bricks, whereas the wide wall is going to have wide bricks. And so if you want the bricks to be the same size on both walls, you need to edit the material. That's step 2. So the general structure of your space should be built out at this point, and now we want to start adding the finishing touches. So first is collectibles and vegetation. Any shelves that you built or places to put collectibles that you have, you want to start filling in those spaces. Having plants and trees around your space will also help bring it to life. Now, after I've added these elements, I'm now going to want to insert my skybox. And the reason I'm doing this after is because your skybox is going to have a very large impact on the lighting inside your world. And so a few things here. One, if I add lighting elements to my world before I add my skybox, then the way I've positioned my lights based on how my world is lit up before I add my skybox may change after I've added it, which means I would have to go back to each and every one of those lights to change its intensity or maybe even position it to a different spot, and that's just a headache. Now, if I add the skybox before I add my collectibles and textures and all the other simple shapes, it just makes building a little bit more inconvenient in terms of lining up walls. I mean, if you got like a space skybox and then some big starry constellation staring you right in the face when you're trying to line up two pieces, it becomes a bit of a hassle, right? So keeping that space very nice and empty while you're doing all of that just makes it easier. So we're adding this skybox after we've added simple shapes, collectibles, and textures, but after we add our lighting elements, because we know that once we add our skybox, the lighting will change. And so now that we've added our skybox, we now add our lights. So let's say you're building an apartment and your skybox is a bustling city at night. Everything in your world is now naturally going to be darker because your skybox is set at night. So now that we know this, it's going to give us a much better idea of what areas we need to light up and how much. Now this stage is often where your space will really start to take shape. Even at times it feels like it's overkill, but I'll have lighting on the ceiling, of course, walls, but also the floors. It's just really important to have lighting everywhere. The last details to add are going to be any finishing touches, like particle effects. If you want to animate like any moving elements, maybe you want to add some stream boards or whiteboards around your space, you can do that as well. There's not water, but there is fire, so maybe you want to add some of that. And any other details outside of what we've already talked about. So to summarize everything from start to finish, you're going to select your building environment after you've changed your settings. You're then going to set your spawn point, begin building your space with simple shapes. You're then going to apply textures to those simple shapes, add your collectibles and vegetation, then insert your skybox, add your lighting accordingly, and round things off by adding your finishing touches. Ladies and gents, that is going to conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. Those are going to be all the steps you can take to create your first VeVeVerse space, and it should be coming soon from what I hear. And if you guys haven't already, make sure to create your Ready Player Me avatar. That way you guys aren't using just the default one when you get in there. But if you enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. And as for our next, I will catch you then.